All right. We should be live with Beta Climbers' second live video, Bolt Wars. Bolt Wars. So today, if you're aware, we're at the 11th hour here. The 11th hour. Okay, so there's a policy that's going to be kind of affecting all climbers. And I have some people on, I'm going to have on, and also anyone in the chat could probably join the Discord and look at the stage, hop in, and I'll pull you up here, and we could chat about the whole thing together if you want. So let's pull in a first guest, and we'll just talk about what's going on here. And I'll probably pull up the policy too, and we'll just go over it. So let's see. I gotta figure out how to do that. All right, cool. Hey,
How's it going?
welcome to OCAP. So we have. I'm gonna have to change my scene here to Everest. We're gonna have to go to the top of the world. Over here, we have things said like new wilderness management proposal could render every climb on El Cap illegal. So there's a bit of like, uh, what's the word? Like extravagant language going on here. And after reading the policy, it seems like it's not that crazy. It's kind of like, from what I'm getting it, I'm actually trying to form an opinion of it, and so far I'm kind of like this might be a good thing because just like what every person a with a bolt gun could just start bolting.
Yeah, I'm conflicted as well, uh, which biases me against the policy because as far as I understand, it's set up in a way where it is open to interpretation, and so there is the potential that it could be used for some bad things that really limit the ability for climbers to either stay safe or, climb at all based on who is deciding to implement it.
Right. So, like, I think the thing is that scare people is that you're gonna have to fill a form, and then you're gonna have to rely on bureaucracy and the government to get that done in a timely manner. So let's say you found a climb and you want to bolt it. I mean, and also it's pretty unenforceable. So who's going to be out there? I guess they're going to be looking around and being like, "You got a permit for that, buddy?" I mean, it's kind of crazy that that's already kind of not a thing, right? It's like anybody could just go up anywhere and just stick bolts in the rock, right?
Yeah, that's why it's such a complex issue because, I've been in places like Pine National Forest in Colorado where like the South Platte ethic is bolt on lead. And so if anyone sees a bolt couldn't that doesn't just have the world's nicest jug or like a ledge below it, like people will chop that shit.
Well, we live in a world of glue-on holds too. Like the policy covers like
Yeah.
anything. I think it's mentioned something in there like anything that's left behind by a person that isn't taken away. So it's like kind of leave no trace. So a glue-on hold technically is like leave no like you're leaving something there. It's almost like you're leaving a ball. So now if you want to, what if you want to like glue on a hold? Now it's like you got to get a permit for it. I don't know. That's so strange.
Sure. From an L&T standpoint, the way we look at it is that we protect ourselves first, the equipment second, and the environment third, because the environmental impact of a rescue, of doing sketchy shit, if you avoid bolting in somewhere that doesn't accept trad, where it needs a bolt, and you fuck yourself up, there like the environmental impact of you getting rescued is going to be a lot larger than if you had just put a bolt in.
Right.
And so the way in which we preserve nature is either by not climbing at all, which is one of the very valid fears that people have as a result of this policy, or we bolt, which, it does cause things to be more of an impacted area. I don't know how much of a bolt, how much a bolt really impacts a giant cliff, but like certainly, yes, we are impacting the wilderness with the attempt to be able to experience it in a safe way.
So this whole thing closes tomorrow. So if anyone wants to leave comments on this thing and read through it, today's the day. We're at the like 11th hour here. So if you have any opinions, you're gonna have to leave them there on that page. Um, I I I think like especially out west where you're just climbing on like hard mud, right? You're gonna want bolts are probably way better for the climb, and especially like maybe canyoneering, where you're gonna be wrapping around natural pieces and natural anchors. You're gonna be doing a lot more damage and erosion to that area than if you put some bolts. So, but I don't think anybody should be putting in just like nasty like it's funny because this happened in the drone hobby. So I fly drones recreationally and professionally. So everyone started buying drones. And it got to the point where it's like anyone who bought a drone, the first thing they do, you know what the first thing they do is when they buy a drone? They go,
Stuck in a tree.
they go, let's see how high this can go. And they hit it and it goes all the way up into like the airspace of like flight like big jets. So it's like the FAA is like, what are we gonna do? So what they did was, and they worked with like drone companies, is it's a process to like fly it commercially. You have to. I actually had to go to an airport, take a ground class, like basically the same thing as if you're going to get a pilot's license. And I actually got a pilot's license, but it says drone on it. So can you imagine if climbing got to the popularity of where just anybody, and well, not just anybody, but everybody with a drill is like, let's make this climb just like the gym and bolt it up. Like that would be nuts. And so like at that point it's like, man, you need a class before you just start drilling holes in the wall. But climbers have been really good at self-regulating this, right? You not just anybody's going up there willy-nilly. Like people are pretty good with like knowing that there's climbing ethics, and you'll have a climbing accident if you go and do something stupid like chipping holds or like sticking in rebar instead of like an actual ball.
Oh my goodness, that's so many things to address. Uh,
Sorry.
the rebar thing. We won't even go into it. Uh, but I think that's the thing is that right now there are no requirements that anyone can go bolt, and somewhere between the culture of mentorship where it's not so easy outside of Ryan's bolting Bible to just figure out how to bolt things. The cost of the materials, like gas powered hammer drills, are still not cheap. Like, and hardware. The people who are bolting the majority of the things in the States are like, there's not a lot of people. Some of them are folded by ASCA, some of them are funded by AAC. But like most of these people are putting thousands of their own dollars into it. And so the situation that we're already in is one where people who aren't passionate about doing the right thing probably don't have the biggest impact because they're probably doing like very little. Like anyone who gives a shit are are also giving a shit enough to put good effort into this.
Yeah. All right, I got this guy here, Trevor, that I was telling you about. So it's Trevor is I saw his like just randomly going through Instagram, and I saw his reel, and he posted about this topic. So I was like, hey, you want to join in on a live and discuss it? So I'll get him in here, and then we'll all you can stay in here too. We could all chat together, and we'll play his reel and then go over that. Let me see if I get him in over here. Right click, invite to speak. And then, okay, he's got accept. All right, hey Trevor, you coming in?
How's it going?
Hey, I got you. Let me play your Instagram reel for everybody, and then let me see what scene I got. I'm still on my portal edge. I got to get over here back to Everest. Okay, Yeah, all right, I got this right here. Let's drag this over here. So let's play your reel.
Rock climbing is about to change forever. The U.S. Forest Service and National Park Service are pushing bills to prohibit the use of bolts within certain areas, which would deem towers like the Sentinel Spire unclimbable, as well as thousands of routes across the USA and hundreds of routes in the Colorado National Monument. The public has 6 more days to post comments about the bill. People, this is a numbers game. If you at all care about the safety, community, or history of rock climbing, or the rights to access and use our beautiful public lands,
It means we
please
have
speak
to
up.
put an
It's
area
easy.
for us.
Head to my profile and click on this Access Fund link.
Okay, you guys probably didn't hear that, but the audience did because I can't get the desktop audio onto the Discord for whatever reason. But
Oh, so YouTube
yeah,
did it.
it's on YouTube. Okay, so yeah, too bad for you, ADH. You're not gonna be able to hear that, but basically, your take is like this is gonna like change play. Well, go ahead and talk about it. I'll get you over here. I gotta switch my scene. There we go.
Yeah, I mean, I guess to start off, the reel was definitely an inflammatory little post. It did not do justice to all of the like meanings of the bill and all of the different, subtexts of
You
the
can't
bill,
you
but
can't get everything you can't get everything into 1 minute. It's like
no,
I mean,
definitely not.
yeah, that's
But
the nature of the
the point
beast.
was to like draw out my long-term expectations of the impact that it's going to have, and so I made it pretty extreme. But the goal was to get notice on the bill so that people could then themselves go read it
Right.
and hopefully post some comments and
That
take action.
that's a good point. It's like people are gonna be like, "Oh, I didn't know there was a bill." What do you mean? What do you mean I can't bolt this thing? Well, I was bolting again. I've been bolting over here for 30 years. What do you mean I can't bolt anymore? Um,
So
let
hopefully everyone who has posted comments about it had took some time to read the bill. That's kind of their responsibility
I went through
as a
the
human being.
bill a couple times, and here's my verdict on the whole thing. Right, so like over here, it recognizes that it's like wilderness and climbing is actually like an activity, a good activity. So they're not like saying, "Hey, no climbing at all. It's a danger to society," which is kind of like climbing's always been a bit of taboo, and there's always been a little bit of that. Like we don't want anyone dying over here. Like no climbing, but they're recognizing that climbing's a thing. It's a proper use of recreation, and they're basically just saying, "Hey, you can't just bolt anywhere you want. You're gonna have to do a permit." And I can't really argue with that. It's hard to argue with that.
Yeah, so the bolting, there's two different sides to it. There's the bolting side and then there's the replacement of bolts side. And one of them is way more important than the other.
Okay.
For sure, the replacement of bolts is way more important than the bolting side of it because I think vertical education was talking about it that a lot of that is done through small nonprofit organizations like the ASCA, um, which is the American Safe Climbing Association. Um, and bolting it's a timely thing that these organizations will hear about from the people that are climbing the routes. They'll be like, oh, there's bad bolts, there's bad anchors, whatever, and the organizations will go out and replace them. It's so to make all these hoops that they have to jump through, um, it's just really going to slow down the process and create safety issues for all of us climbers.
Okay, I could definitely get on board with that. That makes sense. Like if you have to go, if you have, people are gonna. I could see like a post at the bottom of like a climb that says, climbing like route under construction or something. Like no, you have to wait till the permit is done until this gets like fixed. That's kind of lame. But like, I don't know what the numbers are on that, and people should probably be bolting where bolts aren't typically ever having. I mean, if a bolt needs to be changed, it's because what they put like a zinc bolt in or something, and now it's rusted. Like if you put a stainless steel good bolt in, how often does a bolt need to be replaced, right?
Yeah, I couldn't
Still,
tell
I,
you
I
that,
hope
but
that climbing is still healthy in America in 50 years, and we're gonna have to start replacing everything. Like
Okay,
we're putting in good solid gear these days, but these things still have a physical lifespan.
right. See, I have a running joke that the future is drilling out the bolts just big enough so you can stick a tri-cam in there. And then every time you stick a tri-cam in a hole, it like the inside of the hole gets a little bit wider. So the placement just gets better and better as people climb. So it's like to get around this, forget about the bolts. Drill a hole, throw a tri-cam in. And there you go. Trad dad. But then now you have mono jugs going up the whole thing. So it's like, I don't know.
See the problem there.
Yeah. And then also you have water get in there and freeze and then crack things up even more. So I don't know if that's a fix. But I think it's a pretty funny idea.
I mean, that's kind of what the bill addresses, is that there are concerns that there may be people who are doing these things, and on across an infinite scale, there are going to be people who make mistakes, who bolt things irresponsibly and incorrectly, and that our wilderness areas pay the price for that.
Yeah.
I-
Yep.
I'm very on the fence in that I'm against it, but I can see how there are policies in the bill that should become ethics of climbers, and I would not like to see them enshrined in law.
Yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
anytime you get the government involved, things get a little bit sloppy. Like there's a little bit of overreach, and I don't know, people are scared of stuff like that. It's like, oh man, we were doing fine by ourselves. Why you gotta bother us? So I
Yeah,
don't know.
this I like your point. I'm sorry, what's your name? Vertical education?
I'm Nathan.
Nathan? All right. It's good to meet you, Nathan. I like your point that that there is definitely a need to enhance ethics, but it's scary to see it go through a law instead of through ethical um, through ethical enhancement. And I think it's interesting that this bill is coming out because we have seen a lot of like new practices within the climbing community come into play within like the last decade. Um, and some of the BLM land canyons that I climb in a lot around here on the Colorado, it used to just be like go climb whatever and you're not going to see anyone, no one's going to say anything. But now there's like signs every year about like raptor closures for like the birds nesting in the
Yeah,
cracks and
Paragon
stuff like that.
Falcons and stuff.
Yeah, like there are movements by these smaller organizations that are going through in order to, protect the environment and protect our wilderness landscapes. So I'm not sure where the severity of this bill is coming from, and so that's kind of interesting to me.
What were like like how many comments did you get on that post? Like a
Oh
ton?
gosh, dude,
S-
I'm like a tiny little Instagram account,
And
and
it,
this is the first post I've ever had that blew up. Right now, it's at
yeah. I
27,000 views, and I have almost 90 comments on it.
Yeah, some of these comments are just
Great.
some of these comments make me laugh. Like let me pull up some of these comments here. Like this one here, I think this kind of was my opinion as a kid. I was like, as a climber, I think they should just ban all bolts. The environment is more important than any sport. I'm also for regulating parks for other sports too. So it's like completely remove like well, first of all, even in a place like the Gunks, you have rap stations, you have bolts. If everyone was rapping off a tree, you'd have no trees left. It's like,
Right.
so I mean, you can't ban all the bolts there. That's just kind of impossible. But now I kind of used to view like, oh, like how it was a bit of a gatekeeper. I was like, man, just everyone's got to stay away, keep everything trad, keep it dangerous. That way we could still have our fun without the crowds. And now I'm like, man, people are just like getting hurt and not being able to enjoy like climbing. And now I'm kind of a different. I'm like a little bit like I like that this place is trad, and I like that this place has bolts. And I think there should be a real good mixture of it. Now, like how much of this wilderness area? When we say wilderness area, like what are they specifically talking about when they say that? Like is there a map where this is wilderness area, this is wilderness area? Like, how much of climbing are we like?
Yes.
Yeah.
That has an answer. Like, yes, this does apply specifically to NPS and BLM land. The Gunks is
Not
still
the
Mohawk
National
Preserve. The
Forest
Gunks is
Service.
private. Yes. But
I don't think it
the
applies to
Gunks is
BLM.
private. The Gunks is Mohawk Preserve. So yeah,
Yeah.
it wouldn't apply there. But reading through it, like they're the way it looks is that it's being set up as a template for land managers to use across the board, and that they're trying to create a permitting system, for any climbing area already, which is fairly standard practice against anyone who has a recreation area. Is that if you're trying to use it for any commercial purpose, those land managers all use the same forms because it's easy.
Right. It's well, like Gunks is like they're owned by the Smileys, and then they sold their land to the preserve, right? So now preserve owns that and regulates it. And I don't like. There's a lot of places that are owned like that. It's where it's kind of like a preserve, and those people regulate the bolts, right? So for places like that, if you wanted to bolt a route, it's basically the same thing. You're gonna have to talk to those people. You're gonna, I mean, that's kind of the way it is. I mean, you gotta like you got to discuss what your plan is before you just go and bolt things. But now it's at like a federal state for this, right? And you have to worry about certain places and get maybe certain places will have certain people that are just more difficult to work with that just won't pass this thing. But in the wording it says it has to be done in a timely fashion. And what is a timely fashion? Is that a month, a year? Like, what are we talking about when they say that? That's kind of unanswered.
Yeah.
So it needs to be addressed in a timely fashion. Sorry, Trevor, you go ahead. You've been trying to cut in.
Oh no, you're fine. Yeah, so that's the thing, is that the bill's kind of vague, and I think honestly it's just a stepping stone. Like they're getting it out there now, and I'm sure there's going to be more alterations to it, or like smaller bills that pass through that kind of change and specify rock climbing. Because I mean, what's next? Is chalk permissible and not permissible? Is that permanent because it can leave stains? And then it just has so much room for growth and it's all coming from people that aren't really that knowledgeable. And that's the scary part, is that in the National Park Service bill, it says that all of the permits for new bolt placements and bolt replacements go to the superintendent of the park, which is crazy. The superintendent, that's, you're one of the high levels of the park. You have plenty of things on your plate already. You manage all of the levels below you. How do you have time to go through bills? And on top of that, how do you make the right decision
So
when you're not a rock climber?
that's funny. So like I don't think you were in here earlier when I was talking about how the whole drone thing worked. So this happened quickly to recap. This happened in the drone community as well, where everyone was buying a drone, people just flying like crazy. The FAA had a lockdown, and they made it so like if you had when it first started, if I wanted to drive or inspect a building with a drone, and I needed to fly within the zone of like an airport, I had to actually make a phone call and first I had to do paperwork with air traffic control of that airport. Go through all this paperwork, get in communication with them, get a scheduled time of my flight, get a walkie-talkie so I could hear plane traffic. Then I would have to like call them when I start my flight and when I stop my flight. This became such a pain in the ass for air traffic control. They just said, forget it. So what they do is they have this like web on the screen where you can see and air traffic control said, okay, here up to in this zone in this circle, you're only flying up to 200 feet, and then in this circle, you're only flying up to 400 feet, so they like kind of already mapped out this is what you're allowed to do, and that's it. Don't talk to me. So if it got like flooded with these superintendents where there's like, I can't I can't regulate all this. It's just impossible. Then
Hmm.
something's going to have to evolve and change to where, okay, you're allowed to do this, this, and this if you use this set equipment, this amount of spacing, and do it in this certain way, and also maybe shown that you know how to bolt, because you can't put bolts in like willy nilly. Like you have to actually have some skill. Like you could read all the bolting whatever instructions you want, but until your body knows how to hold a drill right, the right amount of pressure, and how to actually be skilled at bolting, you're not a good bolter, and you have no business going up there and bolting something, right?
Yeah. And I think that's interesting in what you said about how they created basically a guideline, right? They made the zones where you can fly a drone a certain elevation. I think that is applicable to something like flying a drone because pretty much the same thing happens every time you're going to go fly a drone. Like it's very controlled. I mean, I don't fly drones that much, but when you go out rock climbing, it is a new experience every single time. So like environmental conditions that affect rock climbing are crazy. It is there you will have a different experience every single time depending on the weather or hundreds of different like things that can affect you. And so it doesn't make sense for the land agencies to have to create something like a guideline for that because it won't be applicable to every situation. It's going to need to be broken so many times. And so my fear with this bill is that like you said with the air traffic control people, you overwhelmed them and they got like so fed up with it, right? I think the climbers and the land managers are going to have a lot of conflicts if this bill goes through right out the gate. Like we're going to be like having issues with them, they're going to be having issues with us, and it's going to create kickback and a need for a more solidified resolution or a more solidified guideline, which just won't necessarily work for rock climbing because you need to use your judgment and your experiences and like your knowledge of the sport every time you go out. And it's like, oh, it's your own discretion when you're out rock climbing to know if a bolt is safe or not. It's your own discretion to know where bolts should go based on like rope drag and the descent itself. It can't be this like white paper guideline. And that's what these agencies don't understand and they don't have the experience to understand because they haven't had, you know, a lifetime rock climbing.
I find it funny, like in this paperwork, like at the bottom here, it's got that fill-in thing, right? Where the cavers at? The cavers are mad quiet right now. Like it didn't.
Anyway, capers aside, I was looking at that form, and it's also mentioned in the bill a little bit, but there is a tick box for are you going to be using a power drill?
Yeah,
And the bill says that using a power drill constitutes a negative experience or a negative impact on the park, and so
because
it's a point against you.
they're also worried about noise. Like if you're
Yeah,
out there,
absolutely.
yeah,
But previously, the national parks, you are not like bolting with power tools in national parks was previously banned. Like you can only bolt with hand drills. Uh, I was preparing to say this, so I looked it up.
hmm
Access Fund says only about 7% of America's climbing is in national parks explicitly, but that would actually be a step in the right direction for some of the safety, especially in the valley.
well, this isn't going to allow people to start using power drills. I mean, because the power drills are
It
are a fire hazard, aren't they? Is that the reason, or is it just because people will just start
it
bolting like mad?
I think the reason was it's the same reason is that uh it constitutes a negative impact to the wilderness. But if that paper that you just pulled up in the application at the bottom, power drill is one of the boxes you can tick.
Right.
And it's mentioned a couple of other times in the bill, and so it's not going to work in your favor if you're going to be drilling with a gas powered hammer drill or a battery powered hammer drill. But it looks like it's no longer going to be explicitly banned.
Yeah, I think that's
So,
just an option. I don't think it's because this is going to land on someone's desk and he's going to say, "Oh, he wants to use a power drill." No, we don't do that.
Right.
Let
Yeah,
me
no,
let me
absolutely.
chime
I
in here
don't
real
doubt
quick.
that that'll happen at all.
So the power drills are not allowed in like congressionally designated wilderness areas, like capital W wilderness, the dark green on the map, because it's a mechanized device, and within those wilderness areas, it's supposed to be like a primitive human experience. So it's like walking, horseback riding, that kind of stuff. You can't even ride mountain bikes in these areas. So
Ah,
because it's a mechanical device, that's why it's banned in
that's why it says
capital
primitive.
W.
Makes sense. Makes sense.
Okay, yeah, because I read that it was primitive, and I didn't understand what it meant by that. I guess it's just like, you know, Amish country.
But this bill also, I'm pretty sure this bill also affects um, lowercase w wilderness, like just national park wilderness. Um, and so that's where I think you can, if permitted, use a powered bolt drill.
How much of the climbing community would you say this is an absolute win for? Because I mean, I know there's people out there that are like gatekeepers,
Rusty
don't
trad
want
dads.
anybody out there touching anything. I mean, for them, this is an absolute win, right? So,
I,
I mean, what's his
I
name
don't
from
think
California who's been trying to get bolting banned?
like maybe he's the one who pushed for it, right? I don't know.
I don't think it's a win for the climbing community. I think it might be a win for some individuals. Um, because if we really create obstacles to bolting, or down the line in the future, depending on how all of this unfolds in the next couple years, if bolting becomes completely impermissible, or like we have to chop bolts and stuff like that, that's
Yeah.
yeah,
No,
trad climbing still exists. And I've had comments that are like, just climb trad, we don't need bolts,
that
trad is life, trad is rad. But it's like
you're still gonna have
beginners need to start
you're
somewhere.
still
You
gonna
can't.
yeah, you're still gonna have rap stations, and also if everybody, like I figured when I went down to the Red River Gorge or New River Gorge, I walked there. I was like, man, most of this stuff doesn't really need bolts. Like you could just top rope all this. Like, but then if I thought about it, I was like, if you have a classic climb with all these people that come here, and people are constantly rapping off of trees and stuff, you're gonna have so much damage done to nature. It's just way better to put bolts. And people are having fun, and people should enjoy their sport. And it's kind of like I at one point I valued the rock over people, but now I kind of value people over rock at this point. So I mean, my I have shifted my opinion a bit, but I was very like
I began
anti-bolting.
I began my guiding career out at Great Falls and Carter Rock in Maryland and DC, which has a very strong anti-bolting ethic, and it's a really old climbing area that I think had the first 5.9 in the states, although everyone claims they had the first 5.9.
I
And
climbed a
there's
fi-
no bolts allowed.
I climbed a 5.9 in Yosemite, and there was a plaque there, and it was from like the early 1900s. So I mean, I think
Everyone thinks it.
that's the first
But
5.9.
there are people who have climbed at this spot every day for 60 years, and their mentor before them climbed there every day for 60 years, and so they have an excellent wealth of photos over time. And year by year, the tree line creeps further and further back from the
Ah,
cliff as everything is destroyed.
yeah.
Like this isn't a large area, but it's really accessible from DC, so it's really popular. Even though there's 4 walls in Carter Rock, there's probably 50 climbs,
Well,
and so
you're a guide, right? So doesn't more bolts just kind of poo poo on your parade? Because like if you make climbing way easier, more people are gonna be like, oh, I don't need a guide. It's all bolted all the way up. I got a rack of quick draws.
I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily a concern that I have, just because lowering barriers to access hopefully gets people into positions that are safer.
Right. Well, I mean, let's
Uh,
be honest.
whether or not they are going to seek professional education is not as much of a factor.
There's a lifetime of climbing. There's so much climbing. You'll never touch all the rock in the world. It's just there's some areas have lifetimes worth of climbing, right? So I don't know. It's just
As long
like,
as Seneca doesn't allow more bolts, I'm happy.
right. Like yeah, like I said earlier, some places have bolts, some places don't, and I'm down with that. But I don't think we should be making climbing more dangerous by not being able to replace bad bolts or anything like that. If that's what's going to end up happening, and honestly, I think we're at this point we're in for the ride, right? We're just gonna have to see what happens, and then if the climbing community doesn't like it, we're gonna have to try to make a change somehow.
Mhm. Yeah. I guess we are just kind of in for the ride at this point, unfortunately.
Yeah,
Um,
we're at like the 11th hour here now. I mean, today's the 29th. Tomorrow, it's probably pretty much by tomorrow things have to be submitted. So
No, it's
hopefully
closed
enough
on the
people
30th.
see this. Most people that will see this will see it after the stream. So unless you have anything else to add, I think we pretty much covered everything. We circumvented the whole topic, I think.
Yeah,
I have like,
circumnavigated even.
Yeah.
go ahead. Go ahead, Nick.
Sorry, I have a huge delay. I am in the Middle East. The one thing I wanted to mention is that they reference the 2013 wilderness usage order that says that the climbing is the correct use of wilderness land. And in that, they say that the when these permits are being considered, the thing that they want to use from that order is that clean climbing is the preference, fixed anchors are not preferable. And so in places where, like the gunks, if there was a another wall of the gunks that was wilderness land and there were, a million beautiful climbs, I still support those things having anchors, having cold shuts, because that only increases access, and that responsible access keeps the trees alive, it keeps the rocks from getting destroyed. And that, I think, is where we're gonna start losing things. Like that is, I think, the first thing to go is the safe accessible wraps off of trad cliffs, you know off of things in red rocks that are, so many pitches of trad that just have huge traffic jams on the way down.
Right. Got anything else to add, Trevor?
Yeah. um, this kind of is out of the blue of what we've been talking about, but I think it's pretty important. This bill, in its origin, seems super hypocritical from the people who are pushing it. The person who um, like sponsored the Protecting America's Rock Climbing Act, which is where these two bills stemmed from, is a guy named John Curtis, and John Curtis um, does not really care about rock climbing for one or protecting wilderness areas. So it's interesting because both these bills, like you read them and everything they say, even like the review process to determine if a permit is a yes or a no, it's all about how does it protect the wilderness? How's the wilderness going to be affected? Um, how's the primitive experience affected and stuff like that. But John Curtis, who pushed this bill, has not been an advocate for our wilderness lands at all. And in fact, he drafted legislation to remove 277 acres of already designated, congressionally designated wilderness um, from from being wilderness. So like he's not worried about wilderness and protecting it. So it makes me wonder where this bill where its trajectory is, because in all of its writing it seems like its trajectory is towards protecting wilderness and protecting our environment and stuff like that, but that hasn't been his focus in the in his other legislation. So I have trouble trusting that this is all just about protecting our wilderness. I mean, he supports the gondola that's going through Little Cottonwood Canyon, like he's a supporter of the gondola. So and that's going to take out tons of historical boulders in the canyon.
I heard
So
about that, the gondola thing. I heard about that.
yeah, so
Yeah, as you've been talking
doesn't
about this, I'm googling it, and like the 15th, like the last bill that he released was entitled HR 3397 to require the director of the Bureau of Land Management to withdraw a rule to the BLM relating to conservation and landscape health.
yeah. So at the very core of these bills that are saying yes, we love rock climbing so long as it doesn't hurt the environment. It doesn't make sense because he then turns the other corner and is directly changing, our wilderness landscapes for the worse. So I just think that's important because we just need to evaluate like what this is really about in order to gauge the impact that it's going to have on the climbing community.
For sure, for sure. Well, we live in America. We're a democracy, so I'm sure majority rules, and we'll figure it out, right? One way or another, or else it's just people are just gonna say, "Yeah, forget it," and just do what they do, because it's gonna be super hard to find someone in the woods. Well, I guess you could hear it, but besides that, it's gonna be pretty hard to regulate that sort of thing, especially if you're way out there. Like if you're way out there, who's gonna be, driving the Ranger truck and looking for that sort of thing? I don't
I
know.
Yeah.
don't think it's a matter of if. I think it's a matter of what happens when you're caught. I think
Yeah, yeah. There's no
it's easy
statements
to bring
on
down.
there's no statements on fines or anything, right? Like there's no like
Guess that's where the
Yeah, but
gray
I
area
assume it
is.
will be criminal if it's going into the
yeah, but there's nothing in the
if this.
report. There's nothing in the report that I saw that was like about fines or anything like that.
Because the thing that we're looking at is a draft of the manual as an effect of the bill passing.
Okay, so they're kind of like this is what's gonna happen. And this is how we want you to take it. Yeah, it's basically a rough draft. It's the beta form of what's to come. Yeah, I mean, like even with the drone thing I was talking about, it's like that's how it first started out. It was just like this, and then they evolved it into what it is today. So
I think talked a lot about like the all the bad parts of this and like the doomsday of this bill passing and stuff, which I think it's pretty divided across the climbing community. Some of us are in support of the bill, and a lot of us are against the bill due to like the gray areas of it and stuff. But I mean, I think maybe we should just quickly talk on like what we can recognize to be true and also like what we could see being a truly beneficial like fix to these issues because I mean the problems do exist, like there is overbolting in some areas. There you know Sometimes people don't replace bolts in a safe manner and stuff like that. But do we want to then push this through bureaucracies and these land agencies that may not be prepared to handle the issues? So like personally, I think that we need to just, like Nicholas was saying earlier, enhance the ethics of the climbing community and create, or maybe not create, but like uplift the nonprofit organizations to better regulate our community.
I thought there was. I already thought this was a thing. I thought like people kind of went through something before they just started bolting. Like I thought you
I
had
mean,
a.
it's a mentorship kind of culture where you go and you haul the bag for somebody and they teach you how things work. I think that is a much more responsible version of this rather than there being a course where like you get on some fucking webinar and then you go out and do a day of practice.
Yeah.
I think that regulating and creating that is to say, this is you need a permit per climb. You don't need a permit per person. And so
Here's some
the
comments in the chat.
the real danger before you read those, the real danger is that you have a bolt that goes bad on a super popular climb. You have something on climbs that have 10 parties a day. The permits are on a per climb basis. And like that is my concern is that when you need to replace a bolt, not being able to, like not in the moment,
And
being legally able
and
to
that
keep
that's
people safe.
that's where I think it should be in that's something that should change in there for sure. But and I think there might be something in that footnote where it says it has something for emergency blah blah blah, like where it's like, all right, if you need to change this bolt, yeah, go ahead and change it if it's emergency. I think that's in there somewhere.
There is an emergency like fine print thing, but in reality, when these organizations are going to go out to a route or they're on the route and they find, let's say, 10, there's 10 bolts that should be replaced, but only one of them's like an emergency bolt. It's like, where's the line that draws it between emergency? If they're out there and they're prepared to change bolts, they should change the darn bolts that they can change, you
This
know?
is emergency. I need to send my project.
Yeah.
Emergency. You don't
Yeah,
understand.
these rules as a whole make a lot more sense in the single pitch context, and that is not the scope that we're working with in general. Like, if there are climbs that'll have, 60, 70 bolts in 1,000 meters of climbing. You're not going to go out and change a bolt.
And you're not going to know in filling out a permit exactly which bolts need replaced. You're going to climb the route or wrap in from the top and replace as you go based on what you see and what, your discretion tells you needs to be replaced.
Mm-hmm. Right on. Yeah,
So,
I feel like we're those tree folk people from Lord of the Rings. They're like sitting and just like thinking about it, even though because we're right at the line now. It's like gonna happen like tomorrow. It's like, oh man.
So looking at the text, on routes that have not yet been evaluated, climbers may make emergency repairs of pre-existing fixed anchors if necessary to exit the climb in the safest manner possible.
Yep. So
So
the
if
that
you
routes that
can
have
get
not been
down,
evaluated.
that
if you can't get down without replacing it, and you happen to have all of your bolting gear on you,
yeah, like
it's
who?
cool.
Yeah, but who's climbing and like, okay, I can't get
That's
down.
never happened,
That's
correct?
never that I don't think that's ever happened. Like, oh crap, I can't get down. Good thing I brought all my bolting gear. Let's set it up. Maybe like on El Cap or something. If you have like people brought bolts and they're like, okay, I got install this bolt to get down. I don't know. Yeah.
I don't
That's
I don't
not.
really want to encourage pitons, but like that's the solution there.
Yeah, if you got a good crack.
But anyway, if you're in one of these solutions, you are also not in a situation where you are worried about the legality and what the park supervisor is going to think. Like, I choose to baselessly maybe decide that anytime you do not have the ability to get down safe, you're able to take some more extreme measures.
Yeah. I
My
don't think.
buddy just my buddy just sent me a text, which is kind of funny. We all have been like kind of wondering what the word wilderness applies to in these bills, but it does apply to, just our national parks or like our Forest Service lands. Um, and so, we're concerned about drilling 2 holes into the rock to build a wrap station, but we also have like, um, you know, asphalt roads right up the rim of the canyon, all the way around, 2 visitor centers on, the mouth and the other end of the canyon, and public restrooms everywhere. And I don't see
I mean,
how
on
that impact can be so overlooked.
what's that one hike in like Angel? It's like Angel's Landing or something. They have like
Yeah,
a
and
whole chain system drilled in and everything
Mhm.
because people are gonna be rolling off there. So I mean,
Yeah,
you're complete. You're
there's a
Yeah, in
handrail to
in
the top.
LNT, that's referred to as a sacrifice area, whereby we would like people to experience America's nature. And so in order to do that, we create areas that receive more impact in order to monetarily and, you know, legally justify keeping a much larger area of the park usually as pristine wilderness that's unimpacted, that you need a wilderness permit to go backpacking in. But yes, the irony is certainly not lost, but that is accounted for.
Oh
Yeah.
boy, a lot to say about this thing. All right, I think we should wrap it up. We're coming close to an hour now. Unless you guys have anything else you want to fill in before this goes, be my guest, and then I'll do my outro and we'll say goodbye to all the viewers.
I just say as general, we should uplift the organizations that we have that are supporting climbing and sustainability, like the Access Fund and the ASC and whatever else, and just support them. And maybe as like a climbing community, we can agree that this bill might not be the best direction, and we can oppose it, and while also acknowledge that there are issues that exist that we need to figure out our own ways to solve with the agencies that we have.
Right on. Well, I really appreciate you guys for coming on and being knowledgeable. It's really good for the climbing community. That's the cool thing about climbing communities. Like everyone gets together and talks these things out. So it's really rad. Appreciate it. Appreciate everyone for coming in. Most people come in afterwards. If you got it live, congratulations. So I don't give you guys give yourself a sign off. I don't know if you have Instagrams you want people to follow or not. If you do, you go ahead and mention that, and then I'll just end the call.
Okay, well, thanks everyone for listening in. My name's Trevor Pike. You might have seen my controversial reel that was posted on Instagram. If you want to see it, it's _ Trevor Pike _. Thanks everyone.
Okay. Happy Reach.
Great. I've been Nathan. If you want to follow along, the Instagram is @GearNote.
Accurate. No. Okay. Yeah, you post up really cool
Good
like
job.
it's funny because you do like anchor fails and stuff like that. So I mean, you have a whole.
I also
company.
run dumb anchors. Yes.
Yes. Yeah. He runs dumb anchors. So
I have a lot of Instagram accounts.
yeah, if you want to see something funny, search up dumb anchors, and you'll see that people get into some silly situations. I've probably posted.
I mean, that's the counterpoint to the bill is that
that's what you're gonna get.
the prohibition of bolting results in dumb anchors. Like, all that shit. That's what you get.
Yeah. I've definitely reviewed some of your anchors, I think, on my channel before. So, all right. All right, ciao, guys. Have a good rest of your day. I'm going to hit the gym.
All right, thanks, Josh.
Okay. All right, say goodbye to these guys. Ciao, ciao. All right, guys, I'm going to think about this. I'm going to go to my campground and think about my wilderness areas and all the bills that will be changed in the laws. I hope you guys enjoyed this. I'm going to tuck myself in now. Of course, you don't have to pay me any money, but I'm an Instagrammer and an influencer and a YouTuber, so I live off of likes and follows and subscriptions. So just pay me that. It makes me stronger. Okay. Good night. Love you guys. Bye.